Ex-boss thought firing me would teach me humility. Instead, it taught me how to destroy everything he built. In my decades of presiding over corporate disputes, I've witnessed many tales of workplace betrayal. But Jake Morrison's case stands apart, not just as a story of revenge, but as a masterclass in strategic business warfare that would make Sun Tzu proud. Jake Morrison was 35 when he walked into that glass-walled conference room at TechCorp Solutions for what he thought was a routine quarterly review. 6'2", sharp-suited, and with the kind of confidence that comes from closing million-dollar deals consistently for 7 years. He'd built TechCorp's client base from the ground up, transforming a struggling software company into a $50 million enterprise. But Richard Blackstone, the 55-year-old CEO who'd inherited the company from his father, had other plans that Tuesday morning in March. Jake, Blackstone began, his voice carrying that particular brand of corporate coldness. We need to discuss your approach with our clients.
The previous week, during a presentation to Meridian Industries, TechCorp's biggest client worth $8 million annually, Jake had done something that Blackstone considered unforgivable. When Blackstone had made a promise about delivery timelines that Jake knew was impossible, Jake had politely corrected him in front of the client. "With respect, Richard, those timelines aren't realistic given our current infrastructure. But I can offer something better, a phased rollout that actually delivers results." Meridian loved it. They signed an expanded contract on the spot, but Blackstone's ego had been bruised in front of a room full of executives. "Your insubordination in that meeting was unprofessional," Blackstone continued, sliding a manila folder across the polished conference table. "Effective immediately, your employment with TechCorp Solutions is terminated." Jake stared at the termination letter, his name printed in bold letters next to words like failure to follow company protocol and disruptive workplace behavior. 7 years of 80-hour weeks, of building relationships, of creating the very success that Blackstone now enjoyed, reduced to corporate buzzwords on company letterhead. "You're making a mistake, Richard," Jake said calmly, standing to his full height. "I didn't just work for this company. I built it."
Blackstone smirked. "Companies aren't built by employees, Jake. They're built by leaders. Maybe this will teach you some humility." As security escorted Jake from the building, carrying his personal items in a cardboard box, he passed the sales floor where his team sat in stunned silence. These were people he'd mentored, deals he'd structured, relationships he'd cultivated. All of it suddenly stripped away by a man whose biggest achievement was being born to the right father. That's when Jake realized humility was the last thing this experience would teach him. Walking to his car, Jake's phone buzzed with text messages from colleagues expressing shock and support. But one call changed everything. It was from Thomas Chen, CEO of Quantum Dynamics, a smaller competitor that had been trying to break into TechCorp's market for years. "Jake, I heard what happened. Can we talk?" Within 48 hours, Jake was sitting in Chen's office, not as a job applicant, but as a potential partner. Chen had been watching Jake's work from afar, impressed by his client relationships and deal-closing ability. He made an offer that Blackstone would later regret not considering. "I don't want to hire you, Jake. I want to make you CEO. I'll maintain majority ownership, but you run the company. Your vision, your strategies, your team." Jake leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Just one goal. Show the industry what real leadership looks like."
The first domino fell exactly 3 weeks after Jake's termination. Marcus Rivera, TechCorp's second-best salesman, received a call from his former boss on a Wednesday morning. "Marcus, how would you like to double your salary and actually have your contributions recognized?" Rivera didn't hesitate. By Friday, he'd submitted his resignation to Blackstone, followed by 3 other top performers Jake had recruited over the years. Within a month, Quantum Dynamics had poached half of TechCorp's sales team. But Jake wasn't just taking employees, he was taking everything Blackstone thought belonged to him. The Meridian Industries contract came up for renewal in June. Jake, now CEO of Quantum Dynamics, personally flew to their headquarters in Chicago. The meeting lasted less than an hour. "Jake, we were hoping you'd reach out," the Meridian procurement director said. "Frankly, service quality at TechCorp has declined significantly since you left. we'd like to discuss moving our business to quantum. $8 million in annual revenue gone from TechCorp in a single signature. But Jake was just getting started, and Blackstone had no idea what was coming next. By September, Jake had systematically contacted every major client he'd brought to TechCorp. His pitch was simple and devastatingly effective. You worked with me, not with TechCorp. I'm still the same person, but now I can actually deliver what I promise. Silver Tech Manufacturing, $4.2 million contract, moved to quantum. Global Logistics Corp., $6.8 million contract, moved to quantum. Phoenix Financial, $3.5 million contract, moved to quantum. Blackstone watched helplessly as TechCorp's revenue dropped from $50 million to $23 million in 6 months. The board of directors, many of whom had questioned Jake's firing from the beginning, began asking uncomfortable questions. "Richard," Janet Mills said during an emergency meeting, "our revenue has dropped by more than half. What's your plan to recover these clients?" Blackstone's answer revealed everything wrong with his leadership. "We'll find new clients. We don't need to chase after people who don't understand loyalty." The final move came in December, and it was more devastating than anyone expected. Jake had been watching TechCorp's stock price steadily decline as quarterly reports showed continued losses. The company that had once been valued at $80 million was now trading at $35 million. Blackstone's mismanagement after Jake's departure had accelerated the decline beyond what even Jake had anticipated. That's when Thomas Chen made a proposal that would complete Jake's transformation from terminated employee to corporate titan. "Jake, TechCorp is vulnerable. Their stock is undervalued, their leadership is incompetent, and their remaining clients are unhappy. What if we acquired them?" The hostile takeover took 3 months to execute. Jake leveraged Quantum's improved financial position, secured backing from investors who'd watched his successful client transfers, and launched a bid that Blackstone couldn't counter. When the acquisition papers were signed, Jake Morrison officially became CEO of both Quantum Dynamics and TechCorp Solutions. The company that had fired him for insubordination now belonged to him. Justice came in a form that no one, especially Richard Blackstone, saw coming. The first Monday after the acquisition, Jake walked into the same glass-walled conference room where he'd been terminated 9 months earlier. This time, Richard Blackstone sat on the other side of the table, looking considerably less confident than he had in March. "Richard," Jake began, his voice carrying the same calm authority that had made him successful, "we need to discuss your approach to leadership." Blackstone's face had gone pale. He knew what was coming, but the irony was so perfect that Jake couldn't help but savor the moment. "Your mismanagement of client relationships, your inability to retain top talent, and your failure to maintain company revenue have created an untenable situation," Jake continued, sliding a familiar manila folder across the table. "Effective immediately, your employment with this company is terminated." Blackstone stared at the termination letter. The same format, the same corporate language, even the same font that had been used for Jake's dismissal. The only difference was the signature at the bottom. Jake Morrison, CEO. "You can't do this," Blackstone said, his voice lacking its former authority. "My family built this company." Jake leaned forward, his eyes steady and cold. "Companies aren't built by inheritance, Richard. They're built by people who understand that leadership means serving others, not yourself. Maybe this will teach you some humility." The transformation was complete, but Jake's story was far from over. Under Jake's leadership, the combined companies flourished. Revenue recovered to $65 million within the first year, surpassing TechCorp's previous peaks. The employees who'd remained loyal during the transition were promoted and rewarded. The clients who'd followed Jake were given even better service than before. Richard Blackstone, meanwhile, struggled to find executive positions elsewhere. His reputation in the industry had been destroyed, not just by the hostile takeover, but by the systematic way Jake had outmaneuvered him at every step. Word traveled fast in corporate circles. Blackstone was the CEO who'd fired his best performer and lost his entire company as a result. 6 months after the acquisition, Jake received a letter from Blackstone. It wasn't an apology. Men like Blackstone rarely apologize. It was a job application, requesting a position as a regional sales manager at his former company. Jake read the letter twice, then filed it in his desk drawer. He never responded. The lesson here extends far beyond corporate politics or workplace revenge. Jake Morrison's story proves that true power doesn't come from position or inheritance. It comes from competence, relationships, and the ability to create value for others. When Blackstone fired Jake, he thought he was removing a threat to his authority. Instead, he was unleashing a competitor who understood his business better than he did. The clients didn't follow Jake because of personal loyalty alone. They followed him because he'd consistently delivered results. The employees didn't quit TechCorp just to spite Blackstone. They left because Jake offered them better opportunities and recognition for their contributions.
In the end, Blackstone's downfall wasn't caused by Jake's revenge. It was caused by his own inability to recognize and retain talent. Jake simply provided an alternative for people who deserved better leadership. If you're watching this and you've ever been undervalued, overlooked, or betrayed by people in power, remember Jake's story. Your worth isn't determined by those who fail to recognize it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't plotting someone's downfall. It's building something so successful that their failure becomes inevitable. If this story resonated with you, if you believe that competence should triumph over politics, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who turned professional betrayal into personal triumph. And share this with someone who's dealing with toxic leadership. They need to know that better opportunities are always possible. The truth is, Jake Morrison didn't destroy Richard Blackstone's company. Blackstone did that himself the moment he chose ego over excellence. Jake simply provided an alternative for people who deserved better leadership. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fighting the system, it's building a better system. What would you have done in Jake's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below.